Shalom, everybody. Rob Vanoff here with Rob on the Rock and Telos Torah. I want to do a quick insight or deep dive on a particular short passage here from our weekly Torah portion. And the Torah portion is called Miqqetz, and it begins Genesis 41 and continues into about halfway into chapter 44. The passage I want to look at here is Genesis 41, 50 through 52, and it's the naming of Joseph's two sons in Egypt. So here we are. I heard from people that said they like the black background with the light colored letters, and I thought that it is easy on the eyes, so I thought I'd continue doing it that way. So, but again, the point here is to enjoy some Hebrew from the Torah. You know, it says, your Torah is my delight. It says that many times in Psalm 119, for example, your law is my delight. And I think that's a super important verse. It's a great reminder for us to delight in God's law. And one way to do that is to enjoy reading the text and focusing even on a small portion and reading it carefully and thinking about what we're reading. So here we go in Genesis 41, 50 through 52. Of course, this is Joseph's been in Egypt. Hopefully you know the story, but we're going to look at it here. It says, starting with Genesis 41, 50, Ule Yosef yulad shnei vanim, beterem tavo shenat hara'av. So Ule Yosef, for those who've done some Hebrew, the lamed here, how's that functioning? As what we might call showing possession or belonging. Ule Yosef yulad shnei vanim. Or just a simple preposition, to Joseph, yulad here is the verb, was born. Now, yulad is singular. So yulad, but then the object, shnei vanim, that's not the object, it's the subject, isn't it? Because we have yulad is a passive verb, so we have shnei vanim, yulad. We translate it as were born, but technically yulad is he was born. So it's a simplified way of saying the two sons were born. It doesn't mean that they are one child, but Hebrew can do this from time to time. Ule Yosef yulad shnei vanim. To Joseph were born, or yulad was born, shnei vanim, two sons. And then we have what we call a temporal clause, Beterem tavo shenat hara'av. Beterem means before, and then we have a imperfective verb here, tavo. Before she came. Well, what came? Shenat hara'av, the year of famine. So before the year of famine came, that means this is in the 7 years of plenty, is the context temporally when Joseph had the two sons. And then it continues, Asher yaldalo asenat bat Potifera kohen on, which means, and to Joseph were born the two sons. It says, whom Asher yaldalo Asenath. So Asenath bat Potifera bore to him. And bat Potifera kohen on. Potifera, the priest of On. Now we're going to continue on where we get to the names is verse 51 and 52. Vayikra Yosef et Shem habechor Menashe. Ki nashani Elohim et kol amali. Ve'et kol beit avi. So again, it said, Vayikra Yosef et Shem habechor Menashe. And Joseph called the name of the Bechor, is the firstborn, Menashe. Menashe. Ki, because, and then saying, this kind of means saying, Nashani Elohim et kol amali. ve'et kol beit avi. For Elohim has caused me to forget. That's that word nashani here. Has caused me to forget. Et kol amali, all my amal, that's my hardship. Vet kol beit avi, and all the house of my father. So the name Menashe, we think, oh, it becomes kind of modified to Manasseh through the Greek, and through that initial vowel, it's kind of doing a vowel harmony where it tries to, there's an attraction to the mana, so it's two A sounds, mana, but in Hebrew it's mehna, menashe, and it's a participle, causing to forget, menashe. And with this son, God is remembered as acting in Joseph's life in a very important way. That Joseph is framing his understanding, his experience, and the difficulties been through as God working. Joseph sees God working in his life, and he names his sons accordingly. So vayikra et shem ha-bechor Menashe, ki nashani Elohim et kol amali ve'et kol beit avi. So God basically brings him to a sense of healing. I think it's not. I don't think it's numbness. He's not saying God numbed me so I don't feel anything. It's he's come to a place of peace, of relative peace with respect to all the things that happened to him in terms of his hardship. That is all he's been through, and his past of his father's house. That means all the trouble that he got from his brothers, how they treated him. Then, verse 52, Ve'et Shem Hasheni Kara Ephraim. And the name of the second he called Ephraim. Ki Hifrani Elohim Be'eretz Oniyi. Because God has made me fruitful. Elohim has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. So in both cases, Menashe, the firstborn, and Ephraim, the secondborn, the verb that is the root or the core of those names, Menashe and Ephraim, is attributed to an action that Elohim has taken in Joseph's life. So, we remember Isaac, and the wells, and he names one Sitna, right, where he digs a well and there's something that happens, and then he names the well, and again, and this happens. Well, here we have it and we saw, of course, with the naming of the children of Leah and Rachel or Rachel. We see this back and forth. There's a reason why all the boys are named, given the names that are given. Here we have the same thing continuing on. Even Isaac, all right, Yitzchak remembers, is a reminder of the laughter. Sarah says, all who hear will laugh with me about Isaac's birth, because he's a miracle baby, of course. Well, here we have the same tradition of seeing the blessing of children and naming them in terms of kind of a milestone of what God is doing in the life of the person. And here it's Joseph. In both cases, he mentions God. God has done something. With Menashe, it's ki nashani Elohim, because Elohim has caused me to forget. And then with Ephraim, it's ki hifrani Elohim. So in both cases, Elohim has done something in Joseph's life, and he's acknowledging it. He's confessing it, and he's anchoring that knowledge, that recognition, in the names of these boys. And again, this is still in the years of plenty. It's this, like we're told, it's B'terem Tavo Shanat Hara'av. It is before the coming of the year of famine. And I think this is just a wonderful thing. Does it mean that we always have to name things in this kind of way? I don't think that's what that means. I think it's wonderful if you do. But here we're told specifically in the story of Joseph, where he is having a hard time, we are learning about his trust in God in spite of the hardships, how he's flourishing and doing well because God is with him and blessing him, but also he's continuing to be mistreated, as we know. But here we see his children born, and he's not confined. He's to the past. He doesn't have a heart of resentment. He doesn't have a heart of bitterness. I don't get that at all here. What I get is he did have an emotional difficulty with what had happened to him, but he's seen a kind of healing. He's seen that God has brought me an ease. I'm no longer feeling that pain. Thus, he's saying, and it's God that gave me that forgiveness, or rather that forgetfulness. God has caused me to forget it. He doesn't say, I have forgotten it. He's saying God has, and I see this as an act of God's grace, a grace of healing for Joseph. And then to appreciate, in addition to the relative peace that he has from the forgetting, also the fruitfulness that God has given him in the land of his affliction. So God is with him. With the naming of his children, he's asserting that God is with me. And that's a wonderful thing. It reminds me of Psalm 23. Gam ki elek begates al mavet, lo irara, right? Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Ki ata imadi, because you are with me. Ki ata imadi. That's what King David says in Psalm 23. Ki ata imadi, because you are with me. And that's so crucial for us to remember. Do you remember that? Do you remember that God is with you? If you trust in Yeshua, and his name is Emmanuel, God with us. And it says at the end of the Gospel of Matthew, I am with you always. Do you really believe that? Do you let that fact sink in? Do you recognize that as your foundation? That God is with you. And that's what Joseph is asserting here. He's asserting it in the naming of his children. Now, if he would have named his children otherwise, does that mean he didn't trust God? No, that's not what I'm saying. But he does include this knowledge of God being with him in his difficulties and helping him navigate all the crazy things coming at him. He trusts in God, and that's a beautiful lesson for all believers to be encouraged by the story of Joseph. All right, so that's all I'm going to talk about here was just this passage for Rob on the Rock. I'm going to do another live stream for the Telos Torah channel, which will be from another verse from our same Torah portion. All right, shalom.